Imagine living a life where something unseen follows you everywhere. A quiet presence, almost like a shadow you can never shake. A life wrapped in secrecy, understood only by a select few. Today we step into the extraordinary story of Rod McDowall, a child star who began working in the shadows long before he was even 10. At one point his home was stormed by the FBI, but not for the reasons you might expect. Stay with us because this story holds far more than meets the eye. This is the journey of a boy who would grow into a master of reinvention. You may not recognize the full name, Roderick Andrew Anthony Jude McDowall, but shorten it to Rod McDowall and suddenly it resonates. For fans of early 1940s Hollywood, it's a name filled with warmth, admiration, and a quiet sense of melancholy. He had charm, talent, and a sincerity that seemed to reach right through the screen, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who watched him. But behind that familiar face lies a story rarely told. In this era of rediscovered classics, we're peeling back the layers to reveal a side of McDowall few ever truly saw. His beliefs, his private struggles, and the moments he kept hidden from the spotlight, all come into focus. Among them are whispers about his personal life, including questions surrounding his sexuality, topics that, in his time, were often met with judgment rather than understanding. Yet despite criticism from more traditional circles, audiences continued to embrace him wholeheartedly. So who was Rod McDowall really? Before assumptions take hold, it's worth asking how much we truly know about this remarkable figure. Born in London to Winifred and Thomas McDowall, a merchant seaman, he grew up in a household that adored the performing arts. That passion shaped him early, setting the stage for a life in front of the camera. Mention his name and it still stirs emotion, nostalgia mixed with admiration and a touch of sadness. Much of that comes from his unforgettable performances in classics like How Green Was My Valley and Lassie Come Home. Those roles didn't just make him famous, they made him timeless. Few actors have managed what he did, achieving success as both a child star and a respected adult performer, transitioning seamlessly between the two. Of course, his journey wasn't untouched by history. Like many of his generation, his career was disrupted by the turmoil of World War II. During the German bombings of London, young Rod, full of life and determination, narrowly escaped the chaos alongside his mother and sister. Hand in hand, they fled the danger, eventually becoming part of the evacuation that sent many children overseas. That moment changed everything. It brought him to America, specifically Hollywood, where destiny seemed to be waiting. With his natural charm and undeniable presence, it didn't take long for him to land a major role. At just 13 years old, he appeared as the youngest son in How Green Was My Valley in 1941. The film's success didn't just launch his career, it marked the beginning of a legacy that would endure for decades. But what followed would test him in ways fame never could. Because behind the spotlight, behind the applause, Rod McDowall was living a story far more complex than anyone realized. And that's where things take a deeper, more revealing turn. His breakthrough role quickly turned into something bigger than anyone expected. What began as a single opportunity soon became a defining moment, launching him into the spotlight as one of Hollywood's most recognized child stars. Studios leaned into his charm, often casting him as the likable, handsome young lead, a role he seemed born to play. All the while, war continued to cast a long shadow over his homeland, adding a quiet contrast to his rising fame. During these early years, Rod McDowall shared the screen with fellow British child star Elizabeth Taylor, forming a friendship that would last a lifetime. His natural presence made him a perfect fit not just for films, but for the stage and television as well. Offers came from every direction and he embraced them all. Over the course of more than 6 decades, McDowall built an extraordinary career, appearing in over 100 films and leaving an unforgettable mark across multiple forms of entertainment. But his creativity didn't stop in front of the camera. Behind the scenes, he discovered a deep passion for photography. With a keen eye and artistic instinct, he captured moments that revealed a different side of Hollywood. He published 5 books filled with his work, earning recognition as a serious photographer. One of those collections featured intimate portraits of his famous friends, including Judy Garland, Judy Holliday, and Maureen O'Hara. Among his most notable achievements was photographing Mae West for Life magazine, a testament to his skill behind the lens. Yet even as his professional life flourished, there remained a quieter, more complicated side to his story, his personal life. Though he never publicly defined his sexuality, within Hollywood circles it was something of an open secret. At a time when being openly gay could end a career, silence often became a form of survival. Close friends and companions would later speak about his relationships with men, offering glimpses into a part of his life he chose to keep private. And perhaps that privacy was intentional. McDowall believed strongly in protecting the personal lives of public figures, including his own. He once expressed that fame should never come at the cost of one's inner world. Even in conversations about close acquaintances like director George Cukor, he remained respectful and restrained, refusing to trade in gossip or reveal secrets for attention. In an industry often driven by rivalry and ambition, Rod McDowall stood apart. He built lasting friendships rooted in trust, honesty and loyalty, values shaped by the very films that first made him famous. Those who knew him understood one thing clearly: he was genuine. A gifted storyteller, a thoughtful observer, and a man who chose his words carefully, never speaking beyond what he truly believed. That rare combination, talent, integrity and quiet strength, is what made him unforgettable. And perhaps, it's also what allowed him to navigate a world that wasn't always ready to accept him, while still leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire. Holding on to a strong moral compass in the entertainment world is no small feat, and Rod McDowall managed to do just that. In an industry where authenticity often fades behind image and ambition, he remained grounded, true to himself in a way that quietly set him apart. Much of that strength seemed to come from his early years in film. The roles he played as a child didn't just shape his career, they shaped his character. He once reflected that the messages in those films stayed with him, influencing the person he became. But even those values couldn't change everything. There were parts of his identity he couldn't control, no matter how much the world around him expected otherwise. Growing up in the spotlight, McDowall learned early how to balance fame with reality. To him, acting was like any other job, seasonal, unpredictable. Success came and went, and even at the height of fame, there was always that lingering question about what would come next. During quieter periods he took on roles beneath his full potential, yet he approached each one with professionalism and care, never compromising his dedication. As the years passed, questions about his personal life never fully disappeared. Rumors followed him, but they rarely shook him. Instead, he sought perspective from those who had faced similar scrutiny, including Noel Coward. Coward's advice was simple but powerful: treat critics as if they're mistaken and carry on. McDowall seemed to take that to heart, choosing grace over confrontation. By his late teens he recognized that talent alone wouldn't sustain him forever. Determined to grow beyond the roles that had defined his childhood, he made a bold move to New York. There he immersed himself in serious acting study and embraced the stage, refining his craft through diverse roles on Broadway. It was a turning point, one that allowed him to evolve from a typecast child actor into a versatile and respected performer. Then came an incident that felt almost cinematic in itself. Picture this: the mid-1970s, and without warning the FBI arrives at McDowall's home. The reason? Allegations tied to film piracy and copyright concerns. Sounds dramatic, and it was. Agents seized an astonishing collection, around 160 film prints and more than 1,000 videotapes. At the time this was highly unusual. There was no official home video market, and owning or copying such material raised serious legal questions. According to reports, some of the collection included rare footage connected to stars like Errol Flynn, as well as material from the film Tam Lin, associated with Ava Gardner. McDowall, however, saw himself less as a rule-breaker and more as a preserver, someone safeguarding pieces of cinematic history that might otherwise be lost. Interestingly, he wasn't alone in this fascination. Other well-known figures, including Rock Hudson, Dean Martin, and Mel Torme, were said to share an interest in film collecting and preservation. To them, it wasn't just a hobby, it was a passion for the art form itself. In the end, no charges were filed against McDowall. Still, the experience left a mark. It was a reminder of how quickly things could shift, even for someone who had spent a lifetime in the industry. The whole episode felt like something pulled straight from a Hollywood script, unexpected, intense, and layered with intrigue. And yet, through it all, Rod McDowall carried on much the same way he always had, calm, thoughtful, and unwavering in his sense of self. Because in a world built on illusion, he remained something rare, completely, unmistakably real. In many ways, Rod McDowall seemed ahead of his time. His determination to preserve rare film prints, carefully transferring them into tapes, wasn't just a hobby, it was a vision. Long before film preservation became widely valued, he understood the importance of protecting cinema's legacy, almost as if he knew these moments would one day fade without someone to safeguard them. So when news broke that he had passed away at his home in Studio City, Los Angeles, after battling lung cancer, it struck a deep chord. Fans, friends, and colleagues felt the loss immediately. This was an artist who had given everything to his craft, right up until the very end. And just a day later, his close friend Angela Lansbury shared a heartfelt tribute, describing him as one of the most wonderful friends anyone could ever have. It was a simple statement, but it carried the weight of a lifetime of admiration and affection. Moments like that remind us that McDowall's legacy wasn't built on talent alone, it was built on connection. Even if some of his roles have faded from memory, something about him lingers. Maybe it's the company he kept, or the friendships he nurtured over decades. Among them was Elizabeth Taylor, whose bond with McDowall began in childhood during Lassie Come Home and continued throughout their lives, even reuniting on screen in Cleopatra. Their friendship became one of the most enduring in Hollywood history. But beyond the spotlight, there was a more private side to Rod McDowall, one that wasn't easily shared with the public. He was deeply devoted to the world of film, not just as an actor but as a collector and archivist. His home was filled with reels, tapes, photographs, and autographs, a personal museum that reflected his lifelong passion. Cinema wasn't just his career, it was his entire world. Despite his charm and natural ability to win people over, McDowall chose a different path when it came to personal life. He never married and had no children, something that stood out in an era where such choices often sparked curiosity. Inevitably, speculation followed. Over time, stories emerged suggesting he had relationships with both men and women, painting a picture of a life lived on his own terms, beyond conventional expectations. Years later, accounts like Full Service by Scotty Bowers brought more attention to the hidden side of Hollywood, including claims about McDowall's private relationships. There were also long-circulating rumors about a connection with Montgomery Clift, said to have taken place during the 1950s. Whether whispered behind closed doors or revealed years later, these stories added layers to an already complex life. Yet, what stands out most is not the speculation, but the independence. McDowall lived life on his own terms, navigating fame, friendship, and identity in a world that wasn't always accepting. Some even suggested he played a role in organizing exclusive gatherings within Hollywood's inner circles, further adding to his mystique. Still, to truly understand Rod McDowall, you have to look beyond the headlines and rumors. His story doesn't begin with fame or controversy, it begins much earlier in the formative years that shaped everything he would become. And as we turn back to those early days, the picture becomes clearer. Because sometimes, the key to understanding a life lies in where it all began. To truly understand the bigger picture, the choices he made and the path he followed, you have to go back to the very beginning. Even devoted fans of Rod McDowall may not know just how early his journey began. At just 5 years old, he was already taking elocution lessons, learning how to shape his voice and presence. By the age of 7, with encouragement from his film-loving mother, he stepped onto a movie set for the first time, appearing in Murder in the Family. From there, things moved quickly and quietly. Backed by his mother's determination, young McDowall found his way into more than 20 films, even if it meant bending the rules. At the time, child labor laws in Britain required actors to be at least 14, but he was far younger. So he slipped into studios unnoticed, almost like a child on a secret mission, building a career before he was even supposed to have one. Then came the moment that would change everything, his audition for How Green Was My Valley. Initially, casting director Louis D. Leighton wasn't convinced. He didn't see the charm Hollywood was looking for. In fact, there's a story that he even tried to block the screen during McDowall's test, discouraging others from watching. But director John Ford saw something different. He insisted on giving the boy a chance, and that decision would prove unforgettable. Joined by stars like Walter Pidgeon, Maureen O'Hara, and Donald Crisp, McDowall delivered a performance filled with emotion and sincerity. The film went on to win 5 Academy Awards, and just like that, his place in Hollywood was secured. His fame soared, but even then he knew he couldn't remain the same forever. Breaking free from the image of a child star became his next great challenge. He didn't want to be defined by past success. Instead, he pushed himself to evolve, to prove he was more than the boy audiences remembered. As he once admitted, it often felt like he was trying to outrun his own past, to show the world he was not yesterday's kid. That idea, the sense of something always following him, echoes the metaphor he once described as a demon walking beside you. It wasn't literal, but symbolic of the pressure, the expectations, and the constant need to reinvent himself. Transitioning into adult roles was not easy, but McDowall faced it head-on, taking on everything from Shakespearean theater to darker, more complex film roles. At one point, after deep reflection, he came to terms with the uncertainty of his profession. Acting, he realized, was never guaranteed. Success could shift overnight. Yet he embraced that unpredictability, believing that nothing was ever as good, or as bad, as it seemed in the moment. Yesterday's struggles could become tomorrow's strengths. Over time he built a career that spanned genres and generations. From stage to screen, from classical drama to modern cinema, McDowall proved his versatility again and again. Beyond acting, he became deeply involved in the industry itself, contributing his time to major organizations and supporting creative causes. He wasn't just part of Hollywood, he helped shape it. Despite his fame, he lived with a sense of simplicity and quiet dignity. Friends often described him as witty, thoughtful, and deeply loyal. After sharing the stage with Julie Andrews in Camelot, he spoke warmly of the experience, always appreciative of the people he worked with. Even in his later years, he continued to support emerging talent, recognizing performances like Gregory Harrison's with genuine admiration. Those who knew him best remembered not just the actor but the man. Director Brian Forbes, who worked with him multiple times, once reflected on their lifelong friendship, describing McDowall as someone who remained constant through the years, both personally and professionally. Rod McDowall passed away at the age of 70, leaving behind a legacy that still resonates. His life was one of transformation, from a determined child actor to a multifaceted artist who refused to be confined by expectations. That idea of a demon always walking with you takes on deeper meaning when you consider the pressures he faced, both in public and in private. And yet, despite it all, one image remains timeless: the young boy from Lassie Come Home, full of innocence and promise. It's a reminder of where he started and how far he came. Because beyond the speculation, beyond the mystery, the true heart of Rod McDowall's story lies in his talent. A talent that shined through every performance, from How Green Was My Valley to Cleopatra. His story isn't just about fame or secrets. It's about resilience, growth, and the courage to keep evolving in a world that rarely stands still. And in the end, that's what makes his legacy unforgettable.